Welcome to City of Keene in Focus. Thanks so much for listening. Good morning and welcome to our next episode of City of Keene in Focus. My name is Asa Kramer and I am joined this morning by Elizabeth Furland, our city manager. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning, Asa. We're back on Friday.
We are back on Friday.
That's
I know,
awesome.
The Monday was weird.
Yeah, it's just Monday's always a really busy day and you're kind of just getting back in the swing of things. And so it's really awesome when we can do this on Friday because it's the end of the week and we're now starting to wind down. So this is great. Thank you for putting it back on Friday.
Oh, yeah, no, I prefer the Fridays as well. So how are you doing this morning?
Well, I'm tired, but I'm good. It was a long meeting last night and we kind of joked. There were several staff members joked about it's great when council's on break because there aren't these night meetings and we can catch up on stuff in our office. But boy, when they come back from break, the workload is heavy. So, we had a short week this week with Monday being closed for Labor Day. And then we had a special MSFI on Wednesday night. And that kind of went long because they had a long agenda. And then last night went long too. So
they really hit the ground running when they come back from break.
Yeah, it was good. It was a lot of really good conversation and some good direction for us to be able to move forward with many different initiatives. So it was a good meeting, but it was a little long. So it's always nice when we get to Friday. And last night, there were a couple of things on the agenda that are kind of new. So we've been talking about Keno. The question of whether or not to have Keno has been on the ballot at least twice since I've been here. And in the past, the voters would have to vote in Keno. And it would have to have a positive vote in order to have Keno within the city borders. And both times it's been voted down. So it's been pretty clear that the voters did not want Keno. But this year, the law changed, and now you have to opt out. So we needed to go through this process, and Councillor Favelis put forward a letter to ask the question so that it could be put on the ballot. There's an entirely separate timeline for ballot questions, and your public hearing on the question needs to be within so many days of the vote. And so now that's making its way through the process. And then in addition to that, Councillor Remy put in the question of whether or not the city of Keene should have social districts. Now, this is an interesting one. It's brand new. It's a new concept that allows for alcoholic beverages to be carried around in different places, depending on what you designate as your social district. And I think we're all going to be learning a little bit more about this. It was referred to FOP, so the question really is not whether or not to have a social district, but whether or not to put it on the ballot to vote as to whether or not to have a social district. And then if it goes on the ballot and the voters decide, yes, we want to have this ability, then there's a whole separate process at looking at how do you define it. It could be just for events. Maybe they want to create a social district for events and so that you can carry your beverage around. I mean, if you think about right now, we have the Taste of Keene. Because I asked this question, I said, well, they have wine there. I know that they offer samples for sale and you can carry that around. But the difference is these are full pours that you would get from different establishments in the downtown. They would need to be in a specially marked cup. And then the city would define sort of where those boundaries are. So it could be events. It could be just a district. It could be all sorts of things. So this is going to be an interesting question. But the first thing the council will decide as to whether or not to move it forward to the ballot. So that'll be on FOP on Thursday next week. We'll learn more about it. The Keno question, in the past, we've had the Lottery Commission come down and talk about Keno, and I think they'll do that again when we have our public hearing on Keno. I know the city clerk reached out to the Liquor Commission and said, are you going to come down and talk about this social district idea? And they weren't as excited about it. They didn't immediately say yes. So I don't know if we'll have anyone from the Liquor Commission here or not. It would be helpful, though, because we would need to know the rules. What are the rules of the game?
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of different ways that this could look. The details are very variable based on what people want. So, yeah, I'd be curious to hear what the Liquor Commission says about that.
Yeah. So last night they did vote to put the Keno question on the ballot, so we know that one will be on there. It's just the social district one is the next one that they will decide. And then last night they did approve the recommendation that came out of MSFI to make some adjustments to the scope of the downtown project due to the updated cost of the project. And so the big news there is that Gilboa Ave is not going to be included in this downtown project. So it'll be a later phase because we do need to replace the infrastructure under the ground on Gilboa Ave. But since Gilboa was only going as far as St. James and we were only going to really go halfway down the street, it does make sense to break that off to its own project. And so it'll find its way onto the city's capital plan in the future.
And I really have to compliment you and our Public Works Director, Don Lucier. There was a county commissioner at council last night, Chris Coates, and he made the metaphor of you went to the grocery store at the beginning of the year and $100 would have gotten you 20 items back then. Yeah. Now it only gets you 12. And so costs just are going up and up and up. And so there was some very clever adjusting to the budget to make these numbers work.
Yeah, and a lot of credit goes to Don Lucier, our Public Works Director. He looked at things like reusing lights. We were always planning to use the fixtures, but the actual lights we were going to upgrade. So we found some ways to reduce costs just by reusing things. And then also we had to look at our capital plan because in the capital plan, we try very hard to make sure that there's somewhat level investment year after year in infrastructure to avoid spikes in the tax rate. And so Don had a couple of projects that he was able to push out. And we'll begin finalizing another capital plan. So we go through that process every other year. And that process is happening this year. And the department heads are now looking at all their capital projects. And I suspect it's not the only move we're going to have to make. We are going to have to adjust the capital plan because we're going to need to increase the cost of the projects. And so we'll need to look at, what needs to move. And then the council will be the one to ultimately make that decision. We'll go through a process with them and then they'll vote on an updated capital plan. I think it's usually around January, February when the council does their vote. So this is just one of the many projects that we will need to adjust as we move forward because you're right, Asa, things don't get cheaper and we're really seeing the cost of not only projects but just the cost of goods in general increasing, and that creates pressure everywhere, including on the city's operating and capital plans.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be nice if things got cheaper?
It would be great. So that was a big decision last night. And what that does for us is it finalizes the bid documents because we needed to make those adjustments so that we could put this project out to bid. And we are planning to put the project out to bid either later this month or early next month for construction starting in May. Then we'll wait and see what the bids are. Because sometimes even after making adjustments to the bid documents, it depends on how many contractors bid and what the costs are at the time that they're bidding. And so we'll see whether or not we come in under bid. But then this will go to FOP. So we'll go out to bid. And then once the bids come in, we will review them with the finance committee and they will take a look at any bid alternates that we had in there to see whether or not we can afford them. And then they will also look at if there's any other adjustments that need to be made based on the budgeted funds. So stay tuned. More to come.
Great. We will look forward to that.
So in addition to that, last night there was a change for some on-street parking on Church Street. And this is really something that we are seeing more and more of, and that is these neighborhood schools that had been created that were actually rather small. Now we've seen, them be converted to charter schools that are actually growing in size. And that's a great thing. I mean, we want our schools to do well. We want people to have options. But what it does, as the size of the school increases, it does create some additional pressure on these neighborhoods because they weren't really built for that kind of volume. And so especially during early morning drop-off and afternoon pickup, you'll see traffic increase in the area. And we have some neighborhoods that are feeling this pressure, and they've had people park on their lawn, block their driveway. And while it's a short period of time in the morning and in the afternoon, it can be very problematic. And so we've made some adjustments to parking restrictions around, in particular, the last two parking restrictions have been around the Gathering Waters School, and this one's in the Church Street area. And I don't think that'll be the last of it either, to be honest. It was funny because last night, Councillor Bosley gave a great example. So the other public school districts who are used to this, they're pretty good at moving people in and out. And she talked about how she does drop off for her children. It's really quite efficient. And so maybe there's something to be learned from that. And so I think this conversation will need to continue, as well as the conversation about parking in neighborhoods in general. The city had hired a consultant to look at residential parking, and we've done many of the things in that residential parking report except for a comprehensive parking plan for the neighborhoods. And so we're going to be talking more about that and bringing forward additional recommendations to the council in the future. It's going to be a bigger lift. It's going to be more work because we'll need to look at size of the width of streets and how, where are we having conflict. What sort of changes might we make to the residential parking program that we currently have, and what sort of changes do we need to make in on-street parking. And like everything, we'll make changes, and then if that doesn't work or it doesn't do what we need it to do, we'll continue to make changes and evolve. The work is really never done. So one of the items last night that was referred back to FOP is the airport solar project. This is a big project. It's moving forward. We've been working with Revision Energy on this project for a few years now, and we're finally at the point of actual construction. And in the past, the city has only done solar projects through power purchase agreements, which locks in the rate for the energy over 20 to 25 years. This time we're really evaluating whether or not it makes more sense for us to purchase the solar project and actually be the one that's directing the energy to the grid through net metering. And this project is a 5-megawatt solar farm on airport property that is already restricted. There's really nothing else that we can do with this site. So it makes a lot of sense for us to locate this project there. Revision has prepared some documents related to what they feel the savings will be should the city decide to purchase it versus buy the power. And it's really a significant difference to purchase the property. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars over the life of this project. And so because we need to be really conservative when we make these decisions, I did hire an independent third party to look at Revision's numbers and do a separate analysis with more conservative estimates. And even their estimates tell us that it's millions of dollars that the city can save over the life of this project should we purchase it. So that's moving back to FOP. So last night there was a draft resolution to bond for the project. That will go to FOP. We will continue to have the conversation about ownership. And one of the things that we're under a bit of a deadline because there's a credit at the federal government that has been in place for a few years now that allows for 30% credit for the project if you borrow and use taxable bonds. But the city uses tax-exempt bonds, so the credit would be about 25.5%. We would have to purchase at least 5% of the panels and other items for the project before the end of December. But if we do that, that's about a $3.6 million savings. That's a rebate. Yeah, so it's huge. And that makes this project even more attractive. It is the end of these credits because they end in December, so we really have to make sure that we meet these deadlines if we're going to get those credits, but it's a lot of money. So that's why last night they moved forward with their resolution and kept it going so that it'll be back at FOP. I'm hoping at FOP this Thursday that the council committee makes a decision on ownership, and then we're back at full city council the following week.
That has the potential to be really exciting. You have to weigh the risks versus the benefits of purchasing, but it sounds like it could be a great opportunity.
Yeah, and Beacon Integrated Solutions is the one who prepared the analysis for us. They took the revision estimates and numbers and applied more conservative numbers, such as, what we might get back for net metering credit revenue and what we might get for renewable energy credits. And even with their numbers, which are much more conservative, we are talking somewhere between $8 and $13 million of estimated net benefits should the city move forward with purchasing. Just over $8 million, $8.5 if we don't make the deadline for the federal credit, the 25.5% reimbursement, but just over $13 million if we do. So, it's a big decision versus if we purchase the power through a power purchase agreement, we will have savings, and revision is a bit more optimistic, but Beacon is saying we would have about a savings of $900,000 to $800,000 over the life of it. So there's still a savings, and it's definitely still worth it because we're moving forward with the city's energy goals. This would be one of the largest solar projects, municipally owned solar projects in the state of New Hampshire. So that's all really great. It's just we have to figure out now, what is the council comfortable with in terms of ownership? Because if the city owns it, we have to also invest in it, partway through. There's some capital investments, but those investments have been included in these evaluations. So we'll see. We'll see next Thursday.
Great.
So this week we have PLD on Wednesday night, and then we have FOP on Thursday night. I know PLD will be wrestling with decisions related to some of the zoning changes that recently had public hearings. And I don't know what's going to happen with those. I mean, we had the East Side come out concerned about increasing density and going to 6 units. They had some valid points. I know that the council tries to balance all of that with the ability to create more housing stock in the city. So I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine how that will come out. But I think that will be an interesting conversation with the council. Since we've had the public hearing, once you have the public hearing, there will be no more public comment on those items. So it really will just be a discussion that they'll make a recommendation that will ultimately come back to the full council the following week. So a couple of big items coming up this week.
Well, that's great. It sounds like a lot of good discussion has happened up till this point, and then we will look forward to a lot of really good discussions at PLD on Wednesday, September 10th, and at FOP on Thursday, September 11th. And just because we've had this note before, I just want to remind everyone, MSFI is Municipal Services, Facilities, and Infrastructure Committee. PLD is Planning, Licenses, and Development. And FOP is Finance, Organization, and Personnel.
Great. And, I was thinking this morning, we should have Andy Bohannon on one of our podcasts. Andy, since he's taken on his new role as Deputy City Manager, first he spent a lot of time working with Parks and Rec and the transition, but now he's really been able to focus more on the personnel management and some of the mentorship and training programs that we really wanted to put in place, and he's done some great work with that. We have some good training opportunities for our leadership team and for our supervisors that are moving up, or people in the organization that want to be supervisors that are moving up. Really, the goal is to provide opportunities right here at the city so they do not have to look for those elsewhere, so that they can grow with us. And so Andy's working hard to create those opportunities, and so it'd be great for him to come in and talk a little bit about that at one of our upcoming podcasts.
I love that idea. Yeah, I think he's been doing a great job just as an employee of the city. I know that since he's stepped into those roles, he's sent out employee experience surveys, which has been awesome, that people can provide feedback. They can say oh, this is really working well in my job. This is something I kind of am looking for. And I love that. I love that there's been this direct connection and sort of receptive listening ear. And so I think that's an awesome idea to have him on.
Yeah, and one of the things that came out of those surveys was that employees wanted to have some additional direct contact with me. And so, which is awesome. I thought that was great. So as a result of that, I've been having lunch.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
okay,
at different. So today I'm actually at the wastewater treatment plant having lunch with them. And those have been so much fun. There's really no agenda. I go and talk about whatever it is they want to talk about. Maybe it's an update on a project. Maybe they have something they want to ask me about that they don't understand. Or maybe they just want to give me some feedback about something that they don't like or that they like. And so it's been different at every department, but every month I'm at a different facility for lunch, and it's going great. And it came out of that survey. It was just another way for people to have contact with me without needing to make an appointment, and for it to be more casual so that everyone's comfortable talking about whatever it is they'd like. Because honestly, Asa, we want to retain our employees. We spend a lot of time on recruitment, but we've got great people right here. So if there's something that we need to do, something that we should be doing, that's what I want to hear. And so these meetings, these lunches have been a lot of fun, and I think they've been pretty helpful as well.
That is such a good idea. I love that. And also it's a chance to just chat. I feel like we wear our job hats all day long. And it's nice to let our hair down a little bit and just chat as humans and have fun.
Get
and
to
eat
know
some
each
good
other.
Food.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Very cool. Related, I would encourage you to go to keenanh.gov/jobs if you are looking for a job or you know someone who's looking for a position. There's a lot of really awesome openings on there. And is there anything else that you would like to talk about today?
I think that's it for me.
All right, great. In that case, we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to City of Keene in Focus. We'll see you next time.